Welcome to the Burst Briefing, where we take a stack of information and distill it into the most important nuggets of knowledge. Today, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey through the life and times of a pivotal figure in Nigerian history, General Ibrahim Babangida.
Yeah, and we've got a rich collection of sources here, including excerpts from his own reflections. It's titled, A Journey in Service. And it covers quite a bit. His early life, military career, his time as military president, and his thoughts on some really critical national events. Our mission today, really, is to try and understand the man behind the headlines. What forces shaped his decisions? And what's the enduring impact of this journey and service on Nigeria? That title alone, A Journey in Service, it kind of hints at a complex narrative, doesn't it? What's the immediate impression you get from that?
For me, it's that idea of a life constantly in motion, to a purpose. We're going to unpack this complex narrative, explore everything from his childhood right up to the really challenging decisions he faced at the helm of the nation. So let's begin right at the very beginning. He was born August 17, 1941 in Minna, Niger State, and Ibrahim Babangida's early life, it seems, was marked by some quite unique influences. His grandfather, Malam Ibrahim, was a prominent Muslim cleric and a wanderer, apparently, from Sokoto to Wushishi. People really sought out his views. His father, Malam Muhammadu Badamasi, was a messenger interpreter, and he inspired the addition of Babangida to his name later, just to avoid confusion with a Yoruba name. Interesting little detail there.
Yeah, it is. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how these early experiences, especially in education, really laid the foundations. He went to Gwari Native Authority Primary School, and there was Malam al-Sukuta, his English teacher, who was actually self-taught, and Malam Yakubu Paiko, who used storytelling, of all things, for arithmetic. I mean, imagine learning English from someone who taught himself and got so good he inspired you. It does raise that important question, doesn't it? How do these early teachers, these influences, shape someone who becomes a national leader?
That's a really crucial point. And then came secondary school, provincial secondary school, Biata, a place steeped in history, wasn't it? Capital of the ancient Nupe kingdom. And it was there, amidst the serenity, the history, Zungaru, Nigeria's first capital nearby, Baro, an early transport hub. He showed some early leadership qualities. In 1959, he led this rebellion, may be a strong word, but of junior students defying the senior students' unfair rule about sleeping outdoors in the unbearable heat, and he earned the respect of his peers for it. That kind of defiance, even early on, it tells you something. He also considered engineering, apparently encouraged by his teacher, Mr. Leslie Akande, though he never actually became one. The closest he got, he says, was handling armored tank repairs in the army. And if we can take this to the bigger picture, you can sort of see the nascent signs of his character emerging, right? Resilience, definitely. A knack for leadership, maybe. And a commitment to fairness, perhaps. His decision then to join the Nigerian army, December 10th, 1962, it followed career talks by figures like Captain Gowon, visits from Sir Ahmadu Bello. It clearly aligned him with the trajectory of Nigeria's future military and political elite, sort of set the stage. He trained at the Nigerian Military Training College, NMTC, in Kaduna, later the NDA, of course, and the Indian Military Academy in Dehradun. He even did a practical attachment with the 17-horse Pune Regiment in India.
Yeah.
That engineering interest perhaps fueling that.
Yeah, definitely. And the military, at that time, it was a tumultuous arena, wasn't it? Babangida was right in the thick of it. He saw action quelling the Tiv riots. Those were significant ethno-political disturbances, and dealing with the unrest from the contentious Western Nigeria regional elections in 1965. So he experienced the brutal realities of violence firsthand quite early on. Then came the January 1966 coup, led by Major Nziogwu, right? And this raises a really important question, I think. How did an event that was intended to, as the interview put it, rid the country of all its filth and corruption, How did Operation Demisa devolve so quickly? Well, the source tells us it was infiltrated. It took on an ethnic coloration, especially after the, quote, heinously callous murders of Sir Amadou Bello and his wife, and the killing of Igbo officers like Lieutenant Col Arthur Chinyalu Onigbi, apparently by his own brother. And this was quickly followed by incitement from northern politicians, and then mutinies. It shows how quickly things can spiral, you know?
Absolutely. That initial ambition just completely unraveled, and this chaos, it paved the way for the counter-coup, July 28th, 1966. We read how a meeting supposedly called the Daos coup rumors actually erupted in violence, leading to the deaths of officers like Lieutenant Col Gabriel Conwoeze, Major John Obianu. It was, a truly chaotic period, where even officers like Major Samuel Ogbamudia nearly escaped being killed by people settling old scores, as the text says. Eventually, negotiations brokered by prominent civil servants, foreign diplomats too, led to Yakubu Gowon emerging as head of state. He was only 32, a decision that brought its own complexities, didn't it? Like releasing Chief Obafemi Awolowo, but failing to guarantee Igbo safety in the north.
And what's fascinating here, or might be sobering, is how these intense periods of instability and violence really forged the leaders of that generation. Babangida himself, he emerges as a beacon of resilience during the Nigerian Civil War, commanding the 44th Infantry Battalion, 1st Division, and he was wounded at the Okigwe Front, 1969, by a Biafran Ogbunigwe shell. Those were those improvised explosive devices, shrapnel in his chest. His description of it, he says he didn't feel the shot, just a burning sensation, then a kick in the trunk. It really brings home the human cost of war, the personal stakes.
It really does. That's a powerful detail. Puts you right there. And after the war, his second descent into Umuahia for rehabilitation work in 1970, it showed, perhaps, a remarkable empathy, sharing unit food with orphans, trying to win over the confidence of the local populace, even bonding with former enemies like Dr. Okieji, and on the home front, too. In 1969, he married Maria Okogwu. She later converted to Islam, became Mariam. He even jokes about his Playboy days, apparently, and how Mariam initially turned him down. This personal commitment to a stable family life, avoiding polygamy. It speaks to a different side of the military man, maybe a more grounded side than we often see. So his ascent continued, culminating in him assuming office as military president August 27, 1985. After ousting the Buhari government, he viewed Buhari's policies, according to his reflections, as detrimental to the nation's progress, leading to divisions within the armed forces. He talks about pressure from the rank and file to sort of reconnect the government to society, and his objection to arbitrary dismissals of officers.
Yeah, and this perspective, it gives us a crucial insight into military interventions, particularly in post-colonial Africa, right? Often, they weren't just naked power grabs. They were perceived, at least by those involved, as sort of desperate remedies for systemic governance failures. Babangida's own conviction that transparent civilian governance is the best antidote, even though he himself led a military regime. It's quite self-aware, but also deeply ironic, isn't it? It really highlights the military's paradoxical role in political transitions during that era.
That's a vital connection to make, definitely. So upon assuming office, he immediately embarked on significant reforms, accepted IMF and World Bank loans, which led to Naira devaluation, a huge impact. But he also introduced initiatives like Mamasare that stood for mass mobilization, for self-reliance, social justice, and economic recovery. Quite a mouthful. And the People's Bank, trying to mitigate the impact at the grassroots level, perhaps. He also spearheaded the creation of 13 new states, a testament, he'd argue, to his commitment to inclusive governance. And remember that symbolic act, refusing an umbrella during a heavy downpour at his first Independence Day parade in '85, saying, The troops are out there in the rain. That really resonated.
Right. So the critical question becomes, how do you balance the need for these, well, harsh economic reforms with the welfare of the people? He called SPP, the Structural Adjustment Program, a necessary bitter pill, a phrase many remember. And he stated his focus was on creating lasting institutions like the People's Bank, community banks, DFRRI, the Directorate of Food, Roads, and Rural Infrastructures. The idea was to teach people how to fish, not just distribute fish, as he put it. But while these sought long-term stability, SAP's implementation devaluation, privatization, it undeniably brought significant hardship and public outcry. So you have the dual legacy, don't you? Economic restructuring on one hand, social strain on the other. He also championed privatization, believing government has no business in business, though he does acknowledge some failures there.
Yeah, absolutely. And his administration faced really intense challenges, the Delagiwa murder in 1986. That happened just weeks after the really divisive OIC crisis, the debate over Nigeria joining the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. He saw the Giwa murder, or says he saw it, as a booby trap, a destabilizing act aimed at his government. He described the media's reaction as hysteria, which, is a perspective leaders often take when under intense scrutiny. But it also raises those perennial questions about the role of a free press in holding power accountable, even when it's uncomfortable for those in power.
And it's compelling to note his own personal experience with coup attempts. It wasn't just theoretical for him. He recounts confronting Bukar Dimka during the 76 coup attempt unarmed. He even joked, apparently, "If you shoot me, you know my family. You'll take care of them. They'll become your responsibility." Quite a line. And then later, the profound sense of betrayal he felt from the Vatsa coup plot. That involved plans to bomb the Akko Bridge, hijack the presidential jet. These events just underscore the constant peril, the deep-seated loyalties, and maybe the deep-seated betrayals that shaped leadership in that extremely volatile political landscape.
Absolutely. So turning to the transition to civilian rule, this was essential, but also a profoundly complex part of his presidency. He set up the Political Bureau back in 1986, tasked with designing a new political blueprint. The aim was a stable, two-party system, despite, as he notes, Nigerian politicians' tendency to want to be founders of parties rather than just joiners. An interesting observation.
Yeah, it is. And this prompts us to consider, well, how do you foster a new political culture when all these historical patterns and entrenched interests just keep persisting? He acknowledged what he called the credibility deficit of his administration, and this was particularly compounded by groups like the Association for a Better Nigeria, the ABN. They were calling for an extension of military rule, which inevitably created the perception of a hidden agenda on his part. Even if he denied direct involvement, managing perception during such a tricky transition is, well, incredibly difficult.
That's a really significant point about perception. And the absolute pinnacle of this whole transition process was the June 12th, 1993 presidential election, widely regarded even today as the freest and fairest in our country's history. Yet it was annulled. Now, he explains the decision by citing the military being factionalized, split into rival groups. He said some of his closest colleagues, including a LT general and even Sani Abacha, were plotting against him and against Abiola. He speaks of the, quote, loathing that Abacha had for the person of Abiola, despite their presumed good relationship. He even says he offered Abiola an interim position to try and resolve the situation, which Abiola perhaps predictably turned down. So that's his account, right? His explanation of the extreme pressures, the internal divisions, highlighting the almost impossible choices leaders sometimes face. But it's absolutely crucial to remember many Nigerians and historians see this decision very differently, as a profound betrayal of democratic ideals, regardless of whatever internal military dynamics he describes.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it helps explain his assertion later that the country is bigger than June 12th, and that Nigerians must move forward, just as they made, quote, supreme sacrifice to keep the country one during the Civil War. Now, this perspective is, of course, highly controversial, but it reflects the immense pressure he felt, or says he felt, to prevent national disintegration. That's a recurring theme in Nigeria's political history. He admits, interestingly, to naively hoping Abacha would fall in line, and calls it his second major mistake, believing they could create a new breed of politicians untainted by the past. Ultimately, he stepped aside, as the phrase went, handing over to an interim national government under Chief Ernest Shonekan.
Right. So, in retirement, back in Minna, he reflected on his journey in service, which he states isn't just memoirs of his time in office, but more a personal narrative of encounters with the unexpected. He says he continues to believe in Nigeria's manifest destiny, as he puts it, to be a beacon of stability and prosperity for the black man, grounded in justice and freedom. It's also quite striking that he shares a surprising respect for critics like Ganafola Tinubu, describing him as consistent, which maybe offers a glimpse into his capacity to acknowledge even dissenting voices, perhaps.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. And a significant insight, perhaps, is his view on accountability. He declared his assets before a notary public, claiming to be the first leader to do so. His vision for Nigeria's future development, he emphasizes expanding production in key sectors, encouraging high domestic savings, hard work, sort of standard development goals. What's compelling, though, is his appeal to future leaders to understand the intricacies of policymaking and not be hindered by the vicissitudes of our political history. Easier said than done, maybe. He ends with a really poignant thought, reflecting that his vision for democracy, quote, did not meet the rhythm of time as precisely and perfectly as was required. Democracy must wait, but the price of waiting was high and burdensome. A heavy thought to end on.
Wow, what a profound deep dive that was into a truly pivotal figure in Nigeria's story, General Ibrahim Babangida's journey in service. It really reveals a life just completely intertwined with Nigeria's most defining moments, from the battlefields of the Civil War right through to the complex economic and political reforms and controversies of his presidency.
Yeah, we've explored his early influences, haven't we? His experiences with military interventions, those controversial decisions during the transition to civilian rule, all of it against the backdrop of what seems to be his deep belief in Nigeria's potential. His reflections really remind us that leadership, especially during turbulent times, is often just a series of incredibly impossibly difficult choices.
So, what does this all mean for you listening? Perhaps it's a reminder that history is rarely simple. It's almost never black and white. And the motivations of leaders, they're often multifaceted, aren't they? Driven by a blend of personal conviction, national aspiration, and the immense pressures of the moment. We hope this deep dive has given you some new insights, maybe, and left you with plenty to ponder about the forces that shape nations and the individuals who lead them.